Hello, everyone. My name is PrimeTime Moff, and welcome to our podcast only monthly show, Talking Toons, where each month I am joined by a new special guest. And across two episodes, we discuss tunes and toys from our childhood. In the first episode of the month, we discuss multiple shows and toys. Then we follow up with an episode where we discuss a specific show chosen by our guest. Now, this one has been long overdue, and I'd like to introduce our fantastic guest for the month, and it is the amazing Primetime Paddy. Hello, sir.
Hello, my friend. How are you?
I'm very well, very well. Thank you so much for joining me. It feels as if we talk all the time in messages, but it's nice to see your face. Well, I get to see you. The audience don't get to see you, but I get to see your face and get to chat to
Yeah, well, there's not many people who want to see my face this weekend.
you.
My team's losing. There was a
Oh,
few tears, but never mind. We are here
well,
to talk about toys, are we?
exactly.
And
Yes.
cartoons.
Cartoons and toys.
Yeah.
So, what I try and say, because pretty much everything I've had on, pretty much everything I'll have on, probably falls into the Transformers camp, and that's how I know them. So it'd be very easy to talk Transformers. So we try and stay away from it to an extent. Obviously, it's hard to talk about 80s toys and cartoons without talking about Transformers. But talk to me about what you remember of the kind of cartoons and toys you grew up with.
Well, the first toys I got, I think from memory, it was He-Man. It wasn't Transformers, because Transformers didn't turn up in Ireland until a little bit late. So the movie was well out before I got my
Wow,
first
I didn't know that.
Transformer toy. But He-Man, we got a lot of. Um, and I remember a cousin of mine going over to England and coming back with He-Man and um, a couple of other bits. And I was absolutely just enthralled by this, and then discovered the cartoons and away I went. So He-Man was the first one, I think.
That was the first one for me. My mum and dad said it always said that it was. I think probably for lots of kids that kind of our age group, that was the first big kind of show like that. And they always remind me of the dress up costumes we had and running about kind of when I was He-Man, and that was only when I was 18. Um, but no, I think He-Man was probably the first proper cartoony that had that vibe to it. That was when the Americans had lifted the kind of rules on advertising. Because let's be honest, He-Man was essentially a 30-minute advert for toys, and it worked.
Yeah, I think having access to the toys really, for me anyway, it kind of increased my love for the cartoons because I was a big fan of Thundercats and still am, but you couldn't get those in Ireland for love nor money. And I don't think I saw a Thundercat toy until I was about 12. Until again, um, my infamous cousin went over to England and came back with Lionel. And at that age, I was trying to be cool and follow football and, start looking at girls and that. I wasn't supposed to be interested in cartoons anymore, but I was so jealous. I was like, this
Oh,
is amazing. Lionel, why couldn't I have had this, 2 or 3 years ago? It would have blown my mind because they were a lot bigger from memory. And I don't know if
yeah,
I'm right.
yeah.
They were
No,
quite
you're right.
bigger than the He-Man, and they felt like substantial. It was like this is it's okay to like this toy because
Yeah.
it's bigger and stronger and probably maybe better made. Uh, Although maybe some people might argue that, but yeah, not having access to the toys, I think affected my how I like the cartoons.
And that's interesting because I often think when I hear people chat about let's talk to Transformers, people talk about Transformers and the comics. Like I didn't have access to the comics. Like our wee village I was in, we didn't go into kind of Glasgow. We didn't get into the kind of local towns. We kind of stayed in our kind of wee village. And our wee village didn't have the comics. The only comics they had was kind of Beano and Dandy. The only bit I knew that there was any form of comic of Transformers back in the day was the annuals, and I had all like the annuals. I would get the annuals of He-Man. I'd get the annuals of
Yeah,
Transformers, of Centurions. Like that's what I got more. I had more of that than I ever had of toys. That's what I remember of these things was the kind of shows and the annuals. But I never. I thought that was restricting, but I never thought of the aspect of what if you actually never even got the toys and how. a big part of that
It's
was
funny
for
you
me.
mentioned the annuals because I thought I had a couple here. Maybe they're downstairs. I think it was the '86 Transformers annual I got. Was that the one with Ultra Magnus and
Galvatron,
Galvatron? What year
yeah,
was that? I can't remember.
86.
Was it? Well, I
Yeah,
got them, and that's sort of like, oh my God, this is amazing. Uh, and I think I'm right in saying that it was toy based, so they looked like the toys.
yeah.
But
Kind of like the Ladybird books were like that as well. Had some of
yeah,
those. They kind
yeah.
of had that toy aspect to them.
I
Um,
don't know if it was my autistic side, even though in those days I didn't know what that was. Linking everything together. So if you had the toys, you had the comics, and they matched it, it worked. I really struggled with getting a toy, a Transformer toy, when it didn't look anything like the cartoon. I remember getting my first Optimus Prime. And when I got my Optimus Prime, I was ecstatic with it. But then I would look at the cartoon and I was like, he doesn't look like that. And it used to mess up my mind. I used to get, basically, I wanted Fans Toys Optimus Prime when I was 7 years old. I didn't get it. And the anxiety that cost me was huge. Maybe that's why I'm sitting behind so many Transformers today. Maybe I don't know. But yeah, the '86 annual, that one was a special one to get. I'll never forget looking at that cover and just being in absolute awe of it.
That's funny because I have the exact same feeling for the 85 annual. But I think it's different because I think 86 is the I think it's the 86 annual is the one that comes out in 85, but then goes into 86. So I think actually when you've got the 87 annual, because the first two were Optimus Prime, so it was a third annual, whatever year. Just confuses you. 'Cause it's the same kind of way the FIFA, they release it at the end of one year with the next year's name on it.
Yeah,
But I know what one you mean. But I had the kind of second one with Optimus Prime on it, and I did the kind of same. But I had that very much for a lot of the annuals. And a lot of the annuals is stuff that I never had toys for. So like I had the Centurions annual, never ever got toys. They were bit and like you were saying about the Thundercat Centurions toys were big toy. I only just got this week my very first complete Centurions toy, and it's a toy and a half. That was too expensive for me to get. Like when I was a kid, we never got that. We never got the kind of the big bits. We were like pick one or two things for our birthday and Christmas, and then the rest my mum and dad picked. And it's only when I became older and became a parent myself and had conversations with them, I realised that they would go out and go, we want to get the most toys we can for our money so that the boys have as much as they can have. So they would
yeah,
get things on clearance. So we would get things like a year or two after everybody else got them. Or, I've got a love for a couple of toy lines that were absolute clearance stuff that nobody got bar me because it was so cheap they would then get almost a full wave of stuff. So great, but it was not. I never got like Thunder Tank and all these kind of things that you really wanted. You had one or two things that stuck out. I got a Castle Grayskull. My two big toys I got as a kid: Castle Grayskull and Optimus Prime. And like that, do you need anything better than that? I think that I look back and go, that was. I still have the both my originals of those because they were just so special. Um, So you're saying that obviously there's some of these toys you never got. Was there kind of any toy lines you were other than Transformers that you kind of really got invested in?
I got quite a lot of He-Man stuff. Um, I think a lot of that stuff was bought for me, and you're talking about clearance, and anytime there was a He-Man toy that was on clearance, I got it. I mean, I got some crazy characters of that, stuff that I looked at, and go, I don't know who this guy is,
Yeah,
and you're searching through the cartoons. But of course, in those days, we only had two Irish TV channels, RT1 and 2, and you had the same four or five He-Man
yeah.
cartoons that were on. I didn't see the full series of He-Man. Actually, I didn't watch the entire series of He-Man until I was in Scotland. I was looking at and Thundercats as well, and I was watching cartoons of mid '80s, and messaging Greg going, "Oh, I've only just seen this episode of Thundercats." He was like, "Man, that's like 30 years old." Or,
It's
oh
okay.
yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
does that to me as well.
Like when he met Ice Lion-O. I mean, I'm not. I'm no my Thundercats.
yeah,
greatly well. But there was a blue version of Lion. Well, it actually wasn't Lion, or was it? Was Tiger?
yeah, yeah. It was a Bengali.
Yes,
I'm not going
Bengali.
to reach and get
That's
yes.
him. I remember I saw him and I was messaging Greg going, "Oh, this is amazing. There's a blue tiger just turned up," and he was like, "Seriously, man, really? Uh, what planet have you been on?"
It does that with me when we talk about the new Super Sevens when stuff gets announced, and I thought I knew Thundercats well till I met Greg, and realised I really didn't. I think and I have seen them all since, but they don't resonate as much. They don't stick with you as an adult as much as they did as a kid. So I only saw the first. I remember seeing the Bengali link, so Pimra, Amira, them appearing, and then I didn't really see anything else of him as a kid. But he's going through here's the lunatics, and here's this, and here's that, and I'm like, no, which is a good thing when you're kind of trying to buy these toys, and you're like, I can just say no to them. I'm okay with
Yeah.
that. Um,
In
yeah,
fact, if there was one line of toys now that I would pick up on, I think it would be the Super 7 Thundercats because they just look exactly like the cartoon. And again, there's my link between the cartoon and the toy and wanting it to be a
yeah,
match,
yeah.
for more enjoyment in that. And I see like Greg's stuff on Thundercats. I'm going, I'd love it.
Yeah.
I don't trust myself. I have a room full of Optimus Primes already. I know that I would then have a room full of Thundercats and I'd have to move out,
It's
you know.
he's gone for this isn't the Greg podcast, but he's gone fully in on the Cat's Lair and the
Yeah, he has the
Thunder
whole
Tank.
lot of me.
Yeah, and he's buying all the kind of variant stuff, but he's kind of right in the headspace of I'll buy the variants, and if I don't want them, the variants generally go up in price. So if he doesn't want them down the line, he can get rid of them. So it's not a bad shout. And I think it's interesting because I'm kind of like you. Scottish TV didn't have an amazing selection of um, cartoons. I didn't see a lot of them. We had one TV, and my dad he had the telly in the mornings. 'Cause he was going out. He would get up in the morning, do stuff, and then go and work homers at the weekend. So we never got a lot of the TV to kind of really watch the cartoons and connect with them. What I remember, and I don't know how this was for you, and it would be kind of interesting to see your take on this, videotapes.
Yeah,
Kids' videotapes with the kind of multi episodes, that was where I watched and
yeah,
watched and watched. So, as much as I probably never saw every episode of Thundercats, the ones I saw multiple times. The ones of Transformers, multiple times. Cops, things like that. That videotapes were the big one for me.
Well, what we used to do is we used to record them. So you you'd be on like on a Tuesday and Thursday, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends would be on,
Oh,
and then
oh, what a show!
Monday and Friday you might have Defenders of the Earth, for example. And I used to split the tape, so I would have like one video, and I would
Right?
have five or six of Defenders of the Earth on, record them. I was able to stop them, and like they were a bit jumpy in that,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
And then I have one for Spider Man, and I have one for Transformers and He Man, etc. And I used to watch them over and over and over again to the point where I could recite the words. I remember my cousin Kevin used to come over during the summer, and I'd stick this thing on, and we had three episodes of Defenders of the Earth, and I knew every word for word. And I remember he used to be saying to me, "You're doing rubbish in school. You can't do your spelling, and yet you can tell me what the Phantom's going to say next." I was like, "Mate, what do you want me to say? He's a great character. You know what I mean?" And anything Firestar could say, I could stop it and go, "Hang on, she's going to say this next." Um, I watched it so many times. It was just insane amount. I must have driven my grandmother mental on Sunday mornings, right? I'd have like four videotapes out and I'd be right, I need to record this one, I need to record that one. Scary time.
I loved Spider-Man as Amazing Friends. That's my favorite Spider-Man.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just perfect, because he was fallible, Spider-Man. That's
Yeah.
why I always liked him. You know what I mean? Because he made mistakes and he wasn't perfect. He's more of a human than, Superman or any of those ones. Another one that I used to love watching, and we got a lot of it on Irish TV, was Batman,
Oh,
60s Batman. Uh,
wow.
70s Batman. What was it?
Yeah, the Adam West.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love that too.
it
I
was good.
absolutely love that. That's my favorite Batman. Not because it's the best Batman, but just have such fond memories of watching it.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, you look back now and you look at it and think, oh my God, that was awful. How was I so enthralled by it? You know, uh, it used to be on when we got the English channels. We got the English channels when I was about 10, maybe I was 11. Um, and you used to, like, it was stupid o'clock on a Saturday morning. It's like 5 a.m. You get up and Batman will be on at 6. And I used to set an alarm. I used to have a ring alarm. Just go, ding. It was a really annoying fucking thing. And I had to stop it really quickly because my dad would be in the next room and he'd be out like a shot, going, Jesus, my only fucking Saturday morning to lie in. And half past 5 in the morning, I'm getting, like, turn that thing down, you little. And I was like, it's Batman, Dad. He was like, I'll Batman you. You know, he still says that to me to this day. I'll Batman you. If I do anything wrong, he's telling me off. Yeah, terrible, terrible show, but the memories, it's just incredible.
As a terror, like you look back and watch it now, you have to kind of watch it with the innocence. It's like, do you know what it's like? It's like wrestling, right? So you had to just kind of suspend your belief. You actually wanted to believe all these things were
Yeah,
real when you were a kid. You kind of wanted to ignore the obvious bad things and just enjoy the bits you took out of it. And I think that's a lost art. When we've all grown up, you kind of there's a charm to these things. Caesar Romero, I'm sure it is, it's that plays the Joker,
yeah.
and he didn't want to shave his mustache, and it just it's got white makeup over the top. Like just crazy stuff. Um, I remember it was years later that I realised that it was a Bird. Is it Burgess Meredith? I'm sure his name is the guy that plays Mickey and Rocky was the Penguin. I loved the Rocky movies when I was
Yeah.
a kid, but it was like years after that I realised that's the same person. That's mental. And he's also Serpentor in the G.I. Joe movie. Which I
I think
always was like, what?
I think some of those guys didn't get the credit that they did for the characters,
Yeah,
like Penguin and Joker. Like in today's day and age, if you do a good Joker, you get the credit. But in those
yeah,
days, I think that people almost saw it as slapstick comedy
yes,
when
yeah, yeah.
it was, but it wasn't. To be the Penguin, to be the Joker, even the Riddler. To be a bad guy, you had to have real acting skills to make that character come out. And I don't think we gave them any credit. I think we kind of treated them like they were all Robin. Jiminy
Yeah,
Jillikers,
yeah.
and you're like, not really, man. Come on.
I think I suppose superhero stuff now has, I suppose lots of these kind of geeky things have become more accepted in common culture. That was not a, my dad went to see some of the Marvel films in the cinema. There's no way his dad would have ever sat and went to
No,
see the kind of film. It's
no.
just a total different generation. They've all grown up now, and everybody's a bit more like that's all right to go see Batman films or this that. It's much more widely accepted. But the Batman TV show was not like that, but it probably was. My dad would watch it with us, like similar to like your Muppet Show and stuff like that. It
Yeah,
was the kind of show that you could watch as a parent because actually it wasn't terrible. It wasn't just a baby like some of the shows that my boys watch now. I'm like, I can't watch this. This is awful.
yeah, it's utter rubbish. Yeah,
Whereas the stuff we had, your Muppet Show, the Batman stuff like that, they were decent enough that parent could watch them as well. Like my mum and dad loved the Muppet Show because it was a family thing to watch. They would sit down and watch it. We'd watch it
that was the
together.
only that was the only thing in our household that everybody watched.
Yeah,
The Muppet Show and Little House on the Prairie. And the
like,
only
we watched that as well.
the only reason we watched Little House on the Prairie was my grandfather, God rest him, would have an absolute fit if he didn't watch it. He loved Little House on the Prairie and the Waltons. Absolutely loved it.
We
Um, and we would
we,
sit at
we
home. Even my grandfather, you know, uh, who Jesus, what year was he born in? 1922, I think. the year Ireland gained its independence, my grandfather was born. He would sit down and watch the Muppets. You know, he loved it.
Right. Yeah,
So
similar to our family. My gran and papa do the same. Before we were quite often referred to instead of the Moffats as the Muppets.
I like them.
We took little
Yeah,
bits. I'll give you a quick funny story. The year that the kind of first of the reboot movies went out, so like my wee brother has always called me Muppet. That's what his nickname for me has been since he was as small as he could be. Just called me a Muppet. Call me a Muppet. And we went to see the new reboot, and there's a song where it goes, "Am I a man or a Muppet?" And our whole there's the our all three kids were partners, my mum and dad, we were all in hysterics. The rest of the cinema were actually looking at us going, what is going on over there? But it just was so funny for us that there was a song, Am I a Man or a Muppet? And we were all giggling away, having an absolute hysterics. It came out the week of my birthday, so it had been my birthday treat out. But I think it might have been my 30th. We all went as a family to go see the Muppets. But yeah, yeah. And I don't think I think that's a lost thing. I don't think there's quite as much things like that nowadays for watch your kids. I know The Simpsons kind of was the one in the 90s that had that. It's just run its course now. My kids won't even
yeah.
watch The Simpsons, but I don't have anything like that with the kids that we'll sit and watch together that we all enjoy. It's either we're watching something that we want and they're kind of like, oh, I'm not interested, or it's something they want and we're not interested. There's nothing that crosses over quite like those shows did.
I think there was a lot of that in the 80s. You know, like the game shows. You
Yeah.
could all sit down and watch them. You don't really have that anymore. You know, there's nothing really on TV that you don't sit down and watch together. People will say, "Oh, people do it with Strictly Come Dancing." I'd rather, I'd rather go to a Tottenham game than watch Strictly. You know,
I think
uh,
there's also the aspect that back then, as you said, his channel choices were limited. So, and I also
yeah,
think that
it was
that
on. You
falls
watch
into
that.
you know, back then you watched whatever cartoon was on, other than taping it and watching. But I also think that was good because it meant you gave things a shot that you normally wouldn't have given. Like nowadays, my youngest Sean picks a cartoon and that's all he'll watch, and you can't get him to try and try something else because he wants to watch that cartoon and he watch it over and over again. Jamie kind of did the same. I cheated with Jamie. We've never had normal TV. We just do streaming, but I never let him have TV. I just let him watch my cartoons. We watched all through Transformers, Mask, He-Man. He watched all of them when he was a kid, but it was the same bit of once he's into one cartoon, that was it. That's all he'd watch. Whereas when we were children, you didn't have that option. I'd love to have just
So,
sat and watched a full day worth of Transformers. You got what you were allocated on the channel, and then you would watch other stuff. But it would mean you would watch a Defenders of the Earth and go, "Oh, what's this?" or a Galaxy Rangers, or so many cartoons that you would otherwise have skipped because you wanted to watch a show you like.
yeah, yeah. So if you'd given me an opportunity at that age, I would have just watched Transformers and He-Man and probably Thundercats, and that would have been it. And then you miss out on nuggets like Defenders of the Earth and Spider-Man and Dungeons and Dragons, of course, which is probably my
Yeah,
favorite out of all of them. On a par with Transformers when I was a kid was waiting for Dungeons and Dragons, and that's another thing you see because it was on. We got
yeah,
to watch it. There
yeah.
was like most of those episodes were on. You got to see them, you know, and you kind of got invested in it because you got to see more of the cartoons than you did Transformers. We
Yeah.
probably saw. I didn't see any of series 2 or 3. I think when until I was like 13, 14,
I don't know.
when they started coming on ITV in the mornings.
So what was it? Just I know we're not. I said we're not going to talk Transformers, but I'm curious then. Based on that little interaction, what was it that hooked you on Transformers?
I don't honestly know. Um, I think it had everything. It had a storyline. It had the good guys and the bad guys. Optimus was brilliant. It had so many characters. It had Hot Rod. I know people won't like it, but you can like Hot Rod and Optimus Prime at the same time, folks. It's all right. It's okay. You can do it. Uh, every there was a different character for everybody. You had the strong character. You had Springer, you had Blur, who was a complete nervous anxiety wreck, and he was my favorite character as a kid, obviously, because I am Blur. I just didn't realize that at the time,
I
you
thought
know.
you were really.
Yeah, yeah. Someone else said that to me too. In fact, when I was in school, that's what they used to call me, Wheelie. And they would come in and say stuff in rhyme. And I'd be like, "Shut up! I don't want to be Wheelie. I want to be Blur. I want to be Optimus. But yeah, I was Wheelie, more than likely because of my size, if anything else. Um, but it just had a bit of everything.
Yeah.
Um, and then the toys came out, and again, there's my autistic bit where I had a toy and I had the cartoon, and you could mix them, and I had actually got quite a lot of Transformers as a kid. Again, seconds, people giving me
Yeah.
stuff, and then stuff when it went out of sync, that like other people were buying new toys. I got Transformers, you know,
Yeah.
and I wanted Transformers when other people wanted different stuff. I remember getting a broadside once because it was like a third off.
Mhm.
Daddy came home with this broadside, and I was like, I have no idea who this guy is, but he's a Transformer. I love him. Um, and I was getting just having a look at my G1 shelf now. I got um, Dreadwind and Darkwing. Both of those I got, and they were probably my favorite ever toys I got as a child because they were
That's
just
two G1 toys I'd love to experience. I didn't have those kind of later ones.
unbelievable. That when they came out, they were top of the line. That they combined both forms were perfect. The robot and the alt mode, or the yeah, just pure perfection. I mean, and they still stand up to this day. They're my favorite G1 toys that I've got. I've got them sitting there now. I've got them actually in Japanese colours as well. I picked them up not too long ago. Not in the best condition, mind. Seen better days. Um, but just amazing, amazing. And I think the other thing with the Transformers was it was endless, and I
Yeah.
liked that.
Yeah.
It was just constant. There was always a new toy. There was always something
Yes.
else. So you looked at the comics, and there was an entire different universe. I picked up G2 Mirage not too long ago,
Oh,
and
beautiful.
like there's like an entire everything on a flip side. You go to
Yeah.
Shattered Glass, and there's the world is a mirror. It just was endless. And I think I linked that with never wanting to grow up as a kid. And I think that is why I love Transformers, because there was never an end. It was just ongoing. And it allowed me, in my own mind as a kid, I think, not never having to grow up. I can just continue this forever. It wasn't like Dungeons and Dragons where it stopped, you know?
How many, like, realistically, other than Transformers, there isn't. There is very, very few toy lines or cartoons that have continued. Simon and I are obviously going through the 40 years of Transformers, and there was what you would maybe call dark years in the 90s where there was only, I think the lowest we got to was 17 toys released in 1 year. But every single year since 1984, there has been Transformers on the shelf, and nothing else can say that. There's other toy lines that maybe the things hung around a little bit longer, but there's nothing been consistent. The only other ones that have came went out and come back, Turtles has went out and come back,
Yeah,
but it had points where it was off the shelf. It's the probably closest to it. He-Man definitely had times where it went off the shelf. Thundercats, obviously. Like nothing else maintained that from the 80s other than Transformers. I think there's something to be said about. I always think Transformers are a toy you can play with on your own because you can transform it. Whereas
yeah,
like anything else, it's just a figure. It's a figure. You need a second figure to play. A Transformer, you can just sit and transform it. And I remember just sitting transforming Optimus Prime back and forward, to the point where he was like my original one is. I don't know how he holds together. Like I'm worried that I transform him one more time and he'll just collapse because he was worn out that much. And I think there's something to be said for that aspect of it being something that you can keep playing with on your own. And I what I love about Transformers now is I always have a Transformer on my desk because I treat it like a fidget cube. Like I have that a wee bit of anxiety and a wee bit of stress. You'll see me playing with a Transformer because it's just some of them are just so simple to transform that you can do it without thinking, and it can kind of just be that kind of casual way about it.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've been up here actually in this room with the toys, and I've got pretty much a toy in almost every room in the house, bar the toilets. I know it's sad, but I live alone. I can do it. And this room is what I've always wanted. It's just a room full of toys, and there is nothing else in this room. There's no other reason to be in this room other than the
Yeah.
toy and the jerseys there as well, which I collect as well. But uh, it just gives me peace. It gives me peace. I look up here and I see the comic images on the walls that I've got, and it, it's a strange feeling to say you can look at a picture and it can literally change your mood.
Yeah.
It's incredible. I don't know anything else that can do that. I can't say the same for sport because I look at a picture I've got of Freddie Ljungberg on the wall there, and I
Yeah.
think, oh, that's brilliant. But I remember when he missed that sitter against Chelsea, and you, you don't have that
No.
with the toys. They're it's just there, and the enjoyment is always there. They never let you down. Unlike some of my football teams, might I add. It doesn't let you down, and there's a huge comfort in that. It's probably the bird's biggest comfort blanket, toys. You
Yeah.
know, it probably is. But if it works, for you and it helps you, then we should embrace it. And I think we're in an era now where we can do that. I remember being a kid and wanting to keep all my Transformers, and my late mother, God rest her, she used to like want to give them away.
Yeah. My
Like,
mum
oh,
did.
you're
My
too
mum
old
did the
now.
same.
You want to give them to your friends and your cousins. And I remember my mother had this friend in Athlone. I won't name names, but uh, she had like 4 or 5 kids, and they were boisterous, shall we say? Not our usual people that we hung about with, and I didn't really know the kids that well. But she gave away my Metroplex to these kids, and
Oh,
without
that's not
asking,
surviving.
she gave, and literally that is the God's honest truth. So I went there the next week because we were going in for shopping like we always did on a Friday, and I said to her, "We need to go in there and say hello to these guys." And she was like,
Did you
"Why
want
do you
your
need?"
Metroplex back?
I was like, "Because I guarantee you that Metroplex is in 2 pieces." And I was only 14 at the time. She says, "I guarantee." And she says, "I'm going to teach you a life lesson here, Mammy." So in we went, and guess what?
Oh,
Two
aye.
pieces, 2 pieces. And I've never been so angry in my life. And she came out going, "Sure, what do you care? You haven't touched that toy in ages. You're too big for these toys. You're growing up now. What's wrong with you?" And I remember feeling humiliated and embarrassed that I cared so much for this piece of broken plastic. And
Yeah.
I genuinely thought there was something wrong with me. I was like, "You're worthless. What's the matter with you? You're a child. Why do you care about this piece of broken plastic that these kids have destroyed after a few days?" You know, um, and I just think back to all the toys that my mother gave away, and I think, oh my God, imagine what happened
Oh.
most.
My mum never gave ours away, but we moved house. Mum and dad built a house um, in 1990, and we lived in a caravan for a year, and all our toys went into storage in her friend's garage, and they all got taken out of the garage by her friend's kids. Like I have the only G1 toys I have from my childhood are my Optimus Prime, Rodimus Prime, Grimlock, and my Gears, and that was because they went in the caravan. All the rest of them, and I had get given a wee pile of them when we moved the villages. My best friend gave me his Transformers because me and him had played with them, and he was like, "Well, if I'm not going to have you to play with them, I don't want them. You can have them." And I was like, "Oh, this is great. I got Jazz, I got umpteen other wee ones." And they literally just get put in a box, never took them out, put them in a box, put in that storage, and I never ever actually got them because by the time we went to go and get them, everything was gone. Anyway, that's why we all buy these things. Like that's why
Yeah,
we're still talking in our 40s, we're talking about them and we're still enjoying them. So I think with a good chat about the kind of general toys, we are going to end the conversation just now, and then we will come back in part two where we're going to talk about your preferred choice of conversation. Do you want to tell everybody what we're going to talk about?
Oh, we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, cannot wait.
Of
It's
course we are.
probably one of my absolute favourite cartoons from that era. So I'm thoroughly looking forward to it. So thank you all for joining us for this episode. Look forward to seeing you on the next one.